3 beverages. That is all I am asking you to think about today. Not a supplement stack, not a complicated elimination protocol. 3 drinks, water, tea, and coffee, that show up in more serious research than almost anything else in emergency medicine, and that most people either dismiss as obvious or get subtly, quietly wrong in ways that cost them. And one of those drinks contains a compound that researchers are now using to make cancer immunotherapy work better, not in theory, in actual patients. I want to tell you about that, but I also want to explain something that is more practical and more immediately useful. There is a specific window for drinking coffee that most people are completely missing, and a way to time your water that changes what it actually does for you. By the end of this, you'll have a practical framework for all 3, what they do, where the strongest benefit comes from, and one specific adjustment for each that you can make this week. I've spent over 2 decades practicing emergency medicine. I've seen what chronic dehydration does to kidney function over years. I've watched what people are drinking and not drinking become part of a health story that often arrives in the ER too late to reverse. That's the experience behind what I'm going to tell you today. Water. There is more to the timing than you think. Here is what most people don't realize about water. It's not just about drinking enough. It's about when. Your kidneys filter your blood continuously, roughly 200 liters a day. Think of them as a filtration system that needs a consistent flow of water to work properly. When that flow is slightly low, day after day, the filter gets sluggish, waste products concentrate, and the filter starts to wear faster than it should. This is mild, chronic dehydration, not dramatic, no obvious symptoms, but quietly affecting kidney function over years. According to the CDC and the National Kidney Foundation, around 37 million Americans have chronic kidney disease. 9 out of 10 have no idea. The kidneys don't send pain signals early. They send chemical signals, lab values that slowly drift in the wrong direction, long before anything is felt. So hydration matters, but so does timing. 3 windows worth knowing. First, morning. Your body loses roughly a pound of water overnight through breathing alone. Your blood is measurably more viscous in the early morning. Starting with 16 ounces of plain water before coffee, before food, gives your kidneys the fluid they need to start clearing the overnight waste accumulation. It is one of the simplest biological signals you can send your system. Second, before meals. A randomized controlled trial published in the journal Obesity found that people who drank about 16 ounces of water 30 minutes before each main meal lost significantly more weight over 12 weeks than those who didn't. The mechanism is simple. Water stretches your stomach, and stretch signals reach your brain before caloric content does. You eat somewhat less without trying. Third, and this one matters, especially if you're over 60, don't drink large amounts of fluid in the hour or 2 before bed. Nighttime bathroom trips are a meaningful fall risk in older adults. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in people over 65. If you're waking up 2 or 3 times a night to urinate, it may not be your bladder. It may be your water timing. Front-load your drinking and taper off after dinner. One more thing I want to be honest about. Bottled water. Most people have made the switch from soda to bottled water, and that is a real improvement. But the research on microplastics in bottled water is genuinely concerning. Microplastic particles have been found in human blood, in arterial plaque samples, and in lung tissue. We don't have definitive clinical proof yet, of exactly what this means long term. But when I see a foreign particle turning up in arterial tissue, I take that seriously. A home water filter, carbon block, reverse osmosis, or a quality pitcher filter costs between $30 and $80 and removes the large majority of what you'd otherwise be drinking. A glass or stainless steel bottle to carry it in. That is a low-friction change worth making. Patensakopor. Why not all green tea is the same. Tea is the second most consumed beverage in the world after water. The research on green tea has been accumulating for decades, and the active compounds, polyphenols, particularly a molecule called EGCG, have real measurable effects on inflammation, insulin sensitivity, and blood vessel function. But here is what most people don't know. Not all green tea is the same. The difference is enormous. Standard green tea, whether from a tea bag or loose leaf, steeps in hot water. You get the polyphenols that happen to diffuse out of the leaf into your cup. When you throw away the bag, you throw away most of the polyphenol content along with it. Matcha is different. The entire tea leaf is ground into a fine powder. When you drink matcha, you are consuming the whole leaf. Every polyphenol molecule, every strand of dietary fiber. You're not steeping and discarding. You're drinking all of it. What makes matcha even more unusual is how it's grown. About 28 days before harvest, the plants are covered, shaded from sunlight. The plant responds to that stress by producing dramatically more polyphenols. Studies show matcha can contain 30 to 300 times more EGCG than standard steeped green tea. That is not a small difference. That is a categorically different compound profile, a laboratory study. And I want to be careful because lab studies are not clinical trials in humans, found that matcha tea extracts could kill breast cancer stem cells. Cancer stem cells are the subset responsible for recurrence. We don't have a drug that reliably eliminates them. The fact that a ground tea leaf compound has shown any activity against them in laboratory conditions is worth knowing. I am not telling you matcha prevents cancer. I am telling you the research is there and is being taken seriously. For metabolic health specifically, waist circumference, blood sugar, triglycerides, Oolong tea has the most direct evidence. A study in the Chinese Journal of Integrative Medicine found that daily oolong consumption over 6 weeks reduced body weight and waist circumference, with effects concentrated in visceral fat, the fat around your internal organs that drives metabolic risk. The mechanism involves activating an enzyme called AAMPK, which functions like a cellular metabolic thermostat. When it's on, cells burn fat more efficiently. Oolong activates it consistently, with every cup, with no side effects. For practical use, a 1/4 teaspoon of culinary-grade matcha in warm water once a day is enough to get the full leaf benefit. Oolong is widely available and inexpensive. Either one, consumed daily, is doing something real. The gut-immune connection. And why this changes how I think about what we drink. This is the part I most want you to understand, because it is where the research has surprised even those of us who work in medicine. About 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. Not metaphorically. There is a vast network of immune cells wrapped around the lining of your intestines, in constant two-way communication with the bacteria that live there. The composition of that bacterial community, your gut microbiome, directly shapes your immune function. Here is a finding that I think deserves wide attention. A research team in Paris studied 200 consecutive cancer patients receiving immunotherapy, the type of treatment that removes the molecular camouflage tumors used to hide from the immune system. Immunotherapy works extraordinarily well in some patients. In others, it does almost nothing. Understanding why has been one of the central puzzles of modern oncology. What the team found, patients who responded to immunotherapy had a specific bacterium in their gut. Patients who didn't respond were missing it. One bacterium, potentially making the difference between response and no response to a cancer treatment. That bacterium is called Akkermansia mucinifera. You cannot take Akkermansia as a probiotic supplement. It's not available over the counter. But you can eat foods that cause your gut lining to secrete the specific mucus that Akkermansia grows in. One of those foods is pomegranate. Pomegranate contains compounds that, when processed by gut bacteria, trigger the mucus environment where Akkermansia thrives. A richer Akkermansia population means a better primed immune system. I want to be clear, we do not yet have large-scale randomized trials confirming this changes immunotherapy outcomes in humans. This is a frontier, but the mechanistic evidence is strong, and trials are underway. The broader point is this: what you eat and drink is directly, specifically connected to your immune function, through bacterial populations, through signaling molecules, through responses that are now shaping how oncologists think about patient nutrition. That is not a wellness trend. That is science catching up to something that was always true. Separately, a study of 29 volunteers receiving the flu vaccine found that those who consumed 2 cups of broccoli, sprout smoothie daily, showed a 22-fold increase in their immune response compared to those who didn't. Not 22%, 22 times. That number appears in a published study, Food Affecting Vaccine Response. The practical takeaway: add fermented foods regularly. Yogurt with live cultures, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso. Add pomegranate in small amounts. A handful of seeds, a small glass of 100% pomegranate juice. These are your gut microbiome levers, and they matter in ways that go well beyond digestion. Coffee, the timing window. You're probably missing coffee has been studied as extensively as almost any other dietary variable in medicine. The research is more positive than most people expect. Regular coffee consumption is consistently associated with reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, liver disease, Parkinson's disease, and cognitive decline. The active compounds include caffeine, but also chlorogenic acid, a polyphenol that modulates blood sugar response after meals, supports liver health, and has anti-inflammatory properties. Keep drinking coffee. But here is the thing most coffee drinkers are getting wrong, and it explains a pattern I hear constantly. People who say their morning coffee doesn't really work anymore, that they need 2 or 3 cups before feeling functional, that they've built up a tolerance they can't seem to break. Your body produces cortisol, the primary stress hormone, in a natural rhythm. The peak of that rhythm falls roughly between 8 and 9 a.m. for most people who keep a normal sleep schedule, with a secondary peak around noon. Caffeine and cortisol are overlapping systems. When cortisol is already at its daily high, adding caffeine on top of it doesn't amplify the effect much. What it does do is build tolerance faster, because your adenosine receptors, which caffeine blocks to produce alertness, are being suppressed during a period when cortisol is already doing similar work. Over weeks and months, you need more to get the same response. The adjustment: delay your first coffee by 90 minutes to 2 hours after waking. Let your cortisol peak naturally. Then drink during the decline, roughly between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. for most people. That window gives you the real amplifying effect of caffeine when your natural cortisol is falling, makes the coffee feel more effective, and slows the tolerance buildup. 1 hour later, that is the only change. If you're someone who reaches for coffee the moment you're awake and finds it barely registers anymore, try this for 1 week and notice the difference. Important note for those over 65. Caffeine stays in your system significantly longer as you age. The same cup of coffee that was fine at 45 can disrupt your sleep at 68 if you're drinking it after noon. Be honest with yourself about the timing. What to do this week? A simple framework. Let me compress this into something you can use. Water. Start your morning with 16 ounces before anything else. Drink a glass 30 minutes before your main meal. Taper your fluid intake after dinner. If you're using bottled water regularly, get a home filter. Tea. If you want the highest polyphenol dose available in a daily beverage, start with matcha, a 1/4 teaspoon in warm water. If your interest is metabolic health and waist circumference, Oolong has the most direct evidence. Either one, daily, is meaningful. Coffee. Keep it. Move it back 90 minutes from when you currently start. Drink it during the cortisol decline, not during the peak. And know these numbers. Ask your doctor for your eGFR. That's the estimated glomerular filtration rate, a measure of how well your kidneys are filtering your blood. Normal is above 60. Most people have no idea what theirs is. If you're on Medicare, your annual wellness visit is free. This is exactly the kind of number worth tracking over time. One last thing I want to say clearly. None of these choices is urgent. Nothing in today's video requires immediate action. But what your body is building or wearing down right now is quiet and slow. The kidney that is at 80% today does not hurt. The gut microbiome that is shifting does not announce itself. The chronic inflammation that is accumulating does not send a letter. The choices that protect those systems are also quiet and slow. A glass of water in the morning. A cup of matcha. A coffee that you start drinking an hour later than you used to. Small. Consistent. Grounded in actual biology. That is the practice. I'll see you in the next one.